Hello and welcome to Inspire to Resign Your Weekly Wisdom. So glad to be back with here this week after being gone and traveling for the last couple of weeks. A couple retreats, which I'm excited to share a little bit with you about. But I'm glad to be back, and we have a really special guest with us today. We're going to be talking about something that we don't always think about. We don't always think about how we embody what we want to create, how we're creating that in our lives. And so I'm excited to have Stacey Sims with us today, who is going to share some incredible insight with you all as we talk about how to embody what we want to create. So Stacey Sims is a mind-body educator and author, as well as the founder of The Well. She leads programs and trainings in the US and abroad. So Stacey, just start with telling us a little bit about how you got involved in this and what got you started in doing this type of work.
Oh, well, first of all, thanks so much for having me. It's really nice to meet you virtually and get to know you a little bit more. So, whenever I get asked this question, my eyes go up and I'm like, oh, like, am I telling the long version, the mini version, the short version? So, the work that I get to do in the world is very much a relational, trying to create ways in which we can individually take time to find our best self and start to pull apart some of the things that may have happened to us along the way that have started to create constrictions of body, emotion, thought, and action. So, and my knowing comes from basically having a lot of gifts given to me, a lot of privilege in terms of just where I landed in the world, general agility, mental, physical agility. And then despite those privileges, by my late 30s, I had become almost not completely housebound, but panic disorder to the point of near um, agoraphobia, uh, addicted to alcohol. And I was so clear every day that it was almost like, how did I become this frozen person? With all these, every day I wanted to feel different. I wanted to do things differently, but I would just repeat the same limiting behaviors. And so in my late 30s, I got sober and started Pilates within the same week of one another. And those two programs, because they're really programs, a 12-step program is a program where you get to rethink how you construct your world and what kind of actions you take around emotional responses. And the Pilates is basically a movement discipline that allows you to really reorganize posture, breath, and find clarity in your physical movement. And those two things together really helped me relearn, reconnect, reground. And so it was after I turned 40. I had many accomplishments prior, but after I turned 40, I published my first novel with Viking. I became a playwright. I created these multiple programs that live under the well. And I really started to understand what vitality means, what relational wellness means, what public wellness means. But because I understood what it feels like to
Mhm.
be frozen and dysregulated. So it's my experiential learning of whenever I see someone who's stuck, I have so much empathy because I know how difficult that feels. And I have put
Yeah.
together as many, then I started really deepening my understanding of best practices, but particularly along embodiment, somatics, trauma.
Yeah, I totally understand what you're saying about, having that empathy when you see somebody stuck because everybody gets there at certain points and certain parts of their life and in different times in their life where you feel those moments of like you feel stuck, you're not sure where to go, you're in that place of, okay, how do I move forward? How do I, you know, in some ways give up what I have, that's the security you're holding on to, and being able to move forward in a new way. So it's so important to be able to do this. Well, I wanted to say congratulations on your novel. That's awesome. What is the title of it?
Called Swimming Naked. And it's available on Amazon or, wherever you do books. And and I have a couple children's books. I've written and produced plays. So it's been a really glorious time as a social practice artist and entrepreneur.
Mhm.
But thank you. I appreciate that, Tami.
Yeah, absolutely. I wrote my first book last year, and
You did.
it's definitely a process. And
Oh,
I didn't think I was going to be one of those people to write a book. So for me, it was this transformational process too, of just opening up to the ability and the wanting to write a book, right? Getting it out there and getting those words on paper.
yeah, and I also feel like it has to do it like it's a perfect, almost like practical metaphor of what transformation is like, because you need to have, like if you're writing something, fiction or nonfiction, you have a sense, like there's these foundational pieces of
Mhm.
clarity, but there's also in the writing process, there's a lot of unknown that unfolds. So and the most important thing is you have to just show up and keep doing it.
Yeah.
And I feel like that is really what is you know, we don't transform or change our lives. Generally, it doesn't happen in one like giant burst.
Yeah.
It's starting to get this sort of clarity and then momentum. So the steps just start to
Absolutely.
follow with ease.
Yes, I talk about the clarity in my book too. I call it the clarity trifecta of, like, when we want to make that transformation, when we want to make those changes, it all starts with getting clarity. And as your clarity grows, your confidence grows, your courage grows, your commitment grows, and then that consistency gives you that momentum. So, it's so
And
true that,
discipline.
like, that writing the book is kind of like that same process, right? You get a little bit of clarity on the first part, and you start writing, and then you've got to get more clear on the next part. It's the same in life, and the same in the way that we take things, and the things that we want to transform, the things that we want to make a changes in. So I love that analogy. So tell me a little bit about what you believe embodiment means.
Thank you for that question. So I think, first of all, this past year between pandemic and reckoning of race, equity, inclusion, I think we're starting to hear that term a lot more, embodiment. So the idea of you can't really start to make change personally, relationally, or collectively if we're not able to have an embodied sense of what we're talking about. And I think that for me, embodiment requires some practices, meaning that one of my teachers said, if you can't tolerate sensation, you have emotion. And if you can't tolerate emotion, you have thoughts. And I
Mhm.
suggest that sometimes if you can't tolerate thoughts, you have some sort of action, which is usually sort of a going void, like checking out,
Yeah.
or making maybe impulsive action just because you need to sort of like move that energy.
Hmm.
So embodiment really starts with practicing beginning to drop in and being able to sort of slow down the time between a reaction, like the impulse, the internal impulse, the bracing, the excitement, and then the emotion and the thought. So it's being able to pull it apart and start to understand that, for example, if I all of a sudden feel agitated about something, it's our world moves so quickly, and with all of our social channels and information, we often just believe the first emotion or thought that comes to mind.
Hmm.
And what I find, like for all of a sudden, if I'm driving down the road and I think like all of a sudden find myself thinking about something that's bugging me or someone who's bugging me, I'm like, why am I even thinking about that? It could be because my blood sugar has dropped. It could be because that's a habitual thought that always occurs at that moment on the highway.
Mhm.
Embodiment allows us to take a second and go in and figure out what's going on in here that's driving that thought versus just sort of believing the thought and following that train, which means more stress, more anxiety, which is not going to lead to quality thinking. It's not going to lead to compassion, empathy, and the kind of forward motion I think that we all really do want. Purpose driven, meaning.
Yes.
So embodiment means that you have practices that help to sort of deconstruct and understand some of the habituated constrictions that we've all been given through our formative identity. Like for me, if I'm running late, even though I know the world is not going to end, my feeling is the world is going to end. That comes out of very early childhood, trying to make sure that in my family, being on time was of the utmost importance. So
Mhm.
it's like starting to pull those apart, and not just from the mental clarity, the awareness piece, but also starting to live in harmony with what your body is saying. So mindfulness, meditation, movement, and then this whole field of somatics, which is starting to understand sort of these internal structures of posture, energy, stuck, openness, like how you can start to be playful and really start to fill into your whole self. So that intuitive piece becomes much clearer,
Mhm.
and the capacity to live in the unknown.
Yes, yes. And I think that's a challenge for a lot of people is, having that capacity to live there, be comfortable there, and wait in some sense for the answers to come, for things to be brought about. So what do you recommend, if someone is finding themselves in that thinking phase or even
Mhm.
beyond that of, the action, what's like one of the practices that you would suggest that they can do to kind of stop, readjust, and figure out where they're at?
Mm. I feel like I can tell you what works for me, and sort of in the field, what seems to work for people is
Mhm.
that there's sort of these buckets. One is some sort of contemplative practice. That could be morning pages, journaling. It can be mindful meditation. It can be nature walks, but really creating time for that sort of purposeful clarity and meaning making versus, I feel like sometimes we feel like if we can just Google it, we can make meaning, but
Yes.
we need to stop and digest. So a contemplative practice, a movement practice. We all know that when we're doing our yoga for someone, gardening for someone, nature walks, dancing, all those things are going to be feel more like ourselves. And then I would say the third thing is to find basically your coach, your lifelong learning practice. Like, how do you sit in front of someone who really believes in you and cares about you, who can help sort of say, oh, that sounds like that stuck thing. So being in a group or in a one-on-one practice, that could be therapy, coaching, you know,
Mm-hmm.
one of the trainings that you do, Tami, or that I do, where you find space with people who want you to have a full and happy life.
Yeah, absolutely. So, in some ways, it's surrounding yourself with those people, but picking it intentionally. If this is what it's going to help me with, this is what it's going to help me do. Finding those practices that are going to be kind of become your new habitual thing. So whether it's meditation, the journaling that you mentioned, or some of the other practices that could help you to get out of the do and into the moment, right?
Yeah. And then I would just say one more thing, and I certainly learned this, is that one of the questions I always ask, folks is there something that you need to attend to, but you haven't or feel you can't? And that might be addiction, a relationship that's unhealthy, leaving the job. Like, even if someone doesn't tell me what it is, if there's a sort of the energetic elephant in the room,
Mm-hmm.
that's going to keep, like, addiction for sure is going to tell you all the wrong stories
Yeah.
to keep you stuck. So it's sort of like, if we want to have a really full and gorgeous life, we might take the thing that feels too big to conquer and let's just put it on the table, and let's look at what what is being what is being held in that kind of anything that we feel like we have to hang on tight to. Even if it's something quote unquote good, it may be not serving our bigger self.
Yeah, so true. And I think, sometimes you cling on to it just because it's familiar. It's something that's habitual. It's the easy thing to do, but it's not always healthy. It's not always the right thing. And so breaking that habit can be challenging. Breaking that piece of it can be challenging. And so I know you've got a lot of tools and things to help people through this, but share with us. I know you have one special gift that you have with us for our audience today. What is that?
Yes, thank you. So the nonprofit that I run, we have a bunch of different programs: mindful music moments, True Body Project, all these things that we do. And one of our most gorgeous collaborations is with On Being. That's the podcast and radio show with Krista Tippett. And they have a new podcast called Poetry Unbound with the gorgeous Pedrego Tuma. And we partner with them to combine mindfulness and poetry. And we have all kinds of things we do with that mindfulness and poetry. But if you go to the well.world and you look up mindful poetry, you can get access to basically a free playlist. So you can listen to these meditative prompts and a poem that just allow us to be gifted that contemplative, creative space. So that's what I have to offer.
I love that. I cannot wait to go check those out. I will definitely be going and getting those, and we will post the link for that for you all in just a minute. So you can go grab that as well. And you've got to check this out because I love the idea of the poetry in connection with the mindfulness and as I'm just imagining how beautiful this playlist is. So I cannot wait to check it out.
Wonderful. Well, I'd love feedback too, from you, Tami, or any of your guests to your Facebook page or podcast. I will say one thing, that we decided as a nonprofit to get off Facebook
Mm-hmm.
about a year ago for intentional purposes. That said, you can find us at thewell.world, and on Instagram. We didn't get totally off of it. So
Yes, understood. I mean, sometimes it can be a distraction and other times you need certain pieces of it for business. So check it
absolutely,
out.
absolutely. At least once a week, I'm like, I don't know, maybe we should go back.
Well, they can check you out at thewell.world for sure. And we'll share that link in the comments so you guys have that as well. And it was so great having you here with us, Stacey, and just it really, feeling even just, speaking with you and feeling that embodiment coming over me, just even having this conversation of what is it we are trying to create? What is it that we want in our lives? So I want to challenge you all today as you are listening. And as always, if you have questions, post them in the comments. We will definitely address any questions that come up. But I want you to think about, what is it you are trying to create in your life?
Mm.
And how are you truly embodying that? How are you really looking at what you want to create in your life? What are the things that are keeping you from actually getting that? What are the things
Mm.
that you find yourself in that habitual state going back to that are really just sabotaging you from getting there? So really pay attention to that over this next week and looking at, okay, what is it I want to create and why am I stopping myself from getting there, so that you can at first recognize it and then use some of the tips that Stacey shared with you to really embody that, to be mindful of it, maybe to go grab a journal paper and start journaling about what it is that it is keeping you from getting there. So
Mhm.
thank you so much, Stacey, for being here with us.
Thank you so much.
All right, you all, I hope you have a great rest of your week, and we will see you next week on our weekly wisdom.